Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked For. This time, Birthright Part 1. That's right, this is Birthright Part 1. You know what? We have a Birthright. It's on Facebook. It's All Been Tricked Before. That is our Birthright. You go there, you'll feel like you know us. You know what? It's your birthright to get in on the fun with us because you're part of our family. The It's All Been Tricked Before family. You don't have to figure out who's mom, dad, or anything else. Just come along for the ride, like you're going to do right now on Birthright Part 1 on It's All Been Tricked Before.
Well, you ready to talk about this episode?
I suppose.
Yes.
Great.
It's our birthright.
God. Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. We're here to talk Birthright Part 1. This may be the first time an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation has had Part 1 in the title. Because it's always just the title and then the title Part 2.
Huh.
Well, they're not usually mid-season. 2 parts.
Do you already have an explanation prepared for that?
No, not at all. I was just musing in the moment.
Yeah.
Musing in the moment about it.
It's unusual.
It is. I mean, I think later they may do purposeful.
Unusual that you'd have it prepared.
Oh, no. No. I mean, even I guess Unification was Unification 1 and Unification 2. But that wasn't part of one in Part 2. Yeah, it wasn't. It was just the Roman numerals. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Birthright Part 1, first impressions.
I have maybe part 1 of an impression.
That's fair.
No, that was awful. I really enjoyed it. I think I really like this pair of things. I'm going to jump ahead and say that there's something, I kind of like that we're separating the two, so that we're not like watching the two-parter back to back, because it usually it's going to keep certain other impressions from bleeding in.
Steven, your impression?
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. I'm curious to see where both storylines are going. I'm interested in them, even though I mean in ways they're familiar echoes of other things, I think, but not boilerplates. But actually, Worf's journey through the jungle made me think of Imzadi, actually, and those guys being in the jungle in the novel Imzadi. We knew there's going to be some reveal, and we didn't get it yet, really, about. And for you Patreon folks, Jimmy-Jerome was showing it. But so I thought his journey is still interesting, and I thought I wasn't going to dig Data, but I'm still interested in that one as well. So to Keith's point about things blurring, I did get blurry early on, and maybe during the episode about whether I was watching TNG or DS9. But that might have happened more in the DS9 episode. No, it had to be in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because peanut butter was in the chocolate, not chocolate in the peanut butter.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit while I watched it, but as I've thought about it in the 24 hours or so since I've watched it, there's been things about it I didn't like as much. And I will say, normally I listen to the Greatest Generation podcast, one of our competitors, apparently, but I listen to it after we've recorded because I don't want their thoughts to influence me. Right. I do have to say they did not like this episode at all, but it's not for the reasons that are starting to bother me. So I guess I disagree. I mean, they talk a lot in their episode, and this is not going to be what the Greatest Generation said, because you can go listen to their podcast anytime you want. Right. For me, I thought the characters felt more genuine and well developed than they have in a while. Like, I feel like this season's been lagging, and I appreciated that this was kind of a bounce back of sorts, in my opinion. The opening, Deep Space Nine, looks fantastic in HD. It really makes me wish they transfer that show to HD as well.
Yeah.
And Worf is on the station, which I was thrilled by, because it'll still be 3 years before he joins the cast of Deep Space Nine, but still seeing him walk the hallways with the ponytail made me happy.
Seems like it can't possibly be that long from now, or you know what I mean, from then to. Yeah,
I thought it was weird. They sat down to eat, and Worf says, "What is this?" Like
pasta. He doesn't know pasta.
I mean, there's plenty of times I'll go out to eat with somebody, and they'll be like, "You should get this." That's when I'll ask them what I'm getting. I don't get it. Walk to where I'm going to eat, and then say, "By the way, what is this thing I'm just about to put in my mouth?" Like I can't think of a time where that's happened. Like, okay, I guess where it could happen. And again, I'm thinking of the promenade. It's like, this is the food court part they're in. so they had to go up to some counter somewhere and get it, rather than like, there are sometimes, I guess there would be some functions where, if you're having like a 7-course meal at a nice restaurant or whatever, or somebody else is doing the catering or bought the food, then you might be like, hey, what is this I'm about to eat? But otherwise, I feel like if you went up to a counter, but I'm getting really deep into this. Maybe Geordi was just like, here you go, I got you this for you.
Geordi pulled a Catherine Hicks in Star Trek 4, Do You Trust Me? And then he went, where they're eating is actually what's known as the Replimat. So it's essentially just a cafeteria with replicators.
Okay.
Which makes sense, because that's what I'm sure every starship has a Replimat.
Right.
They just don't call it the Replimat.
Yeah, I started thinking of the answer to the question while you were saying it. At first I misunderstood where you were going with that, but I think that's really funny. Always love that sort of transition humor, like the idea of here we're setting up this shot. It doesn't logically make sense that they would be starting the conversation at this point. But I mean, it seems reasonable to me when I start trying to imagine how he got the food, and he might not have had an opportunity to ask anyone about it until he sat down. He might have asked multiple people, and they're just like, whatever. It's like, hey, by the way, what is this? I know you're going to talk to me now, so
And I like the fact that Geordi was like, this isn't good at all, and Worf was like, nah, it is.
It tastes like liquid polymer.
That's right.
Worf's like, yeah, it's delicious. Which, I mean, I've had the opposite experiences with friends where I'm like, try this food, it's delicious, and I love it, and they hate it. But, the polymer. Lieutenant Junior Grade Bashir, Dr. Bashir, I guess I didn't realize at this point he was a Lieutenant Junior Grade, which is where Geordi and Worf were when the series started. But I guess we're led to understand he's a recent graduate of the academy. So the fact that he even skipped Ensign is a big deal. Oh, right. And as chief medical officer on this far away, which I guess gives me another theory about why he might have taken the job, because he did want frontier adventure. But if he tried to get on the Enterprise D, there's no way a Lieutenant Junior Grade would be the chief medical officer. But if you go all the way out to Deep Space Nine, maybe you could be.
Nice. Yeah.
But anyway.
When they were like, oh, there's a power drain going on, and the next cut is to Bashir, it just made me think of the Family Guy thing for Quagmire. Who else but Bashir?
It's like, let's pick DS9's least popular character that everybody hates at this point.
Wow.
I like Bashir later, but at this point, he's just the lecherous creep.
Yeah.
I really liked, I feel like this was a good use of him. And I think it might even foreshadow like the proper use of him.
So yeah, I liked him in this episode because I felt like he was doing cool science stuff and not being a creep. What I did not like, and I thought a lot about this, is if you remove Dr. Bashir and Deep Space Nine from this episode plays the exact same.
Yeah.
The DS9 and Bashir's inclusion were completely superfluous. And that, it makes me sad. That gets right to my alternate episode. I wanted a true crossover where it meant something to come to Deep Space Nine. It just made me sad how wasted this crossover was.
I can see it from that perspective, but I also see I kind of like the idea of it just being something kind of run of the mill. I mean, here's a cursory explanation for why they're there. If anything, we should be seeing those kinds of things happen more often. It's not a major event. It's just something that would happen. You would have the flagship go out to this outpost at some point because it's important for the,
I mean, they were just there like 6 weeks ago.
Well, that's the point. I mean, there's, they have to come through every now and then, probably more often than you would think, or more often than we actually see it happen. Or more often than they think to show us, I should say.
It's a pretty remote starbase. I wouldn't think they get there that often. They made the excuse that they were there to help the Bajorans with their aqueducts,
right?
Which from that perspective makes sense, but we never saw that. That wasn't the plot. The plot had nothing to do with Bajorans or Cardassians, and I feel like they should have made the plot to do with that part of space in some way.
Well, how far away were they from the point where Worf needed to go? I mean, they made it sound as if this alien were coming from somewhere nearby. I think he even said that the planet was somewhere in the area.
Worf being there didn't have anything to do with why the Enterprise was there.
No, but I mean, it was literally a vehicle for him to be there and encounter this alien that would be in that part of space. And
right.
But that could have been any space station they stopped at, because they were taking them to a planet on the Romulan Klingon border, Romulan and Federation border near the Klingon Romulan. So it shouldn't be anywhere near the Cardassian border. I don't have a clue why they said it where they said it.
True. My first thought, and it didn't pan out, but I mean, I guess. But my first thought was that the Duras sisters having been there would have been a reason for Worf having to be at that station, to have some sort of encounter, or someone to recognize him and say something. But it's certainly they certainly didn't make that clear. I mean, they could have sprinkled in something like that too to make it more relevant, I guess. But
they were really trying hard in this first season, because we already had the Duras sisters and Vash and Q on Deep Space Nine, and now we've got Bashir on Next Gen, and Next Gen characters walking the halls of Deep Space Nine. Though the only other DS9 character that appears besides Bashir is Morn. He doesn't have a line, but he never has a line in DS9 where he's like making out with a blue girl or something. Not making out, but basically canoodling with a blue girl.
Canoodling sounds worse somehow. Wait, but what was I going to say? So going back to your comment about him, Bashir being the least popular character at this point, maybe that was the point. I don't know if they would have had the flexibility to work him in like that to try to boost him by putting him on.
I think they thought Bashir was going to be a popular character because I think they were trying to make him a womanizer in the style of Kirk or Riker. And so at this early in the season, I don't think they would have had any feedback from the fans yet when they were writing this script. So
what year was this again?
93?
Yeah, okay. Before 92.
The internet. Late 92.
Before the internet.
This was 93.
March 93. Yep.
Yes, so before the internet as we know it. I mean, I remember pretty clearly there was around 94, 95. Even then, you didn't really have accessible software for like a consumer to do something like that. I mean, the web browsers weren't even really popular until about 95, 96, maybe.
But you should have read the zines in the summer of 93. I did not.
Darlog couldn't stop talking about it.
So James Cromwell approaches as Jaglom Shrek, immediately recognizable from his voice. This isn't his first Next Gen appearance. If you'll remember, he played Prime Minister Narok in The Hunted, and he will be in part 2 of this, as well as in one of the Next Gen movies. He'll be a different character on DS9, a different character, and he'll be the character he plays in the Next Gen movie First Contact. He'll reprise in both Enterprise and Lower Decks. So
his voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't place why.
The farmer and Babe.
What? The That'll Do Pig?
The bad cop in LA, or one of the bad cops in LA.
LA Confidential, The Green Mile, The General's Daughter. He's got 200 credits on IMDb, pretty much. He's been in Succession recently, the last couple seasons. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But that voice is just so recognizable, even with all the alien makeup. I was a little surprised an actor as well respected as him went full loaf. But
yeah, I was so taken with the makeup that it took me, a few more sentences out of his mouth to be like, oh yeah, James Cromwell's in this episode. But I thought the makeup was great. I didn't realize Shrek was part of the Star Trek universe. Which,
this is before he found Princess Fiona.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, he looks a lot different here.
Well, it's just because once he moves to the swamp, all the algae grows on him and turns him green. This is how he looked before he moved to the swamp.
And I guess we are seeing the evolution of, maybe more money, but really just better makeup. Because, like I said, I think like his is great. I thought the guy last week in Tapestry, the one guy, couple of the aliens in there, in the cantina scene there were good. So,
and then James Cromwell, nobody bothered to tell him that Worf's father's name is Moog, not Mog or whatever he said.
He was saying Mog.
Very original series.
Would you think that it's because they just didn't feel like reshooting, or because they just wanted to go with this is an alien with a different dialect, or
I don't think it was that purposeful.
Like Han and Han. I think
they're just the director. They shot this scene before the later scenes, and the director just did it now. And the whole time, Michael Dorn's going, but they were busy. They were trying to move on. I don't know. Did it bother you that the crew of Next Gen was wearing different uniforms than Bashir and the other DS9ers?
Shouldn't they? Or I don't know.
Well, eventually their uniforms will match up, but right now they're off. It reminds me of season, and maybe this is where Discovery got the idea in season 2 of Discovery, when they're wearing old uniforms and Pike's crew shows up in different uniforms.
I like that though.
Yeah, I think it's fine that it takes them a while to roll out uniforms across the fleet. Although DS9 got theirs first, which seems crazy because it's not as important.
Hey, that algae doesn't grow on trees; it grows in water.
Worf chews out Ensign Lopez because he's not in touch with his feelings and is in full denial, and then breaks a table that has Troy walk in on him.
That glass table didn't stand a chance.
Chekhov's table.
Man, if I'd been more in the bowl, I'd wanted to go back and get a screenshot of the two the two statues that started off that scene.
We've seen those before too.
Just locked in right in there on that, and you just hear, in the background, like what the hell? What's this? And
Worf's having some calisthenics with another crew person. No, I'm kidding. The statue is famously Kallus and his brother fighting. It's a Klingon legend. We've heard about Kallus before in the original series. They've actually mentioned the statue in an earlier episode, Next Gen, and we'll get to Kallus here coming up. More about him. So Data, we find out, can control his hair growth. Why doesn't he just grow a beard sometimes, or just mess with people, or if Lore's around, why doesn't he just like mustache? Now you can tell us apart.
Well, they didn't necessarily say there was facial hair, just the hair that Bashir was looking at.
Oh, it's probably just pubic hair, isn't it? I mean, nobody wants flat, smooth on your Data.
What was that device that they were monkeying around with anyway?
It was something that came back from the Gamma Quadrant, and Dr. Bashir thought it was a medical device of some sort, but didn't know what exactly it was. But that being said, let's forget all safety protocols, hook it directly to the warp engine, and pointed at Data for some reason while we tested.
Again, who could have seen that coming, that something like that would happen? It's just like...
I mean, that was such a ridiculous setup.
Yeah,
there's so many ways that could have been better.
I mean, again, Chekhov's device. It was just like, turn it on, and let's see what's going to go wrong with it. And
honestly, I'm kind of glad that it ended up being something. I mean, that the results ended up being benign so far, or reasonably so, because that would have been ridiculous had it been, because I'm imagining already that this is going to be some kind of weird thing that's going to take over the ship or something like that.
Right.
What didn't have to be that big. It's just okay. We need to move things along. Okay, fine.
I do agree with that part.
But that's kind of my problem with. I mean, I like this episode overall. I liked what they wanted to do with Data and Worf's characters and that exploration. I did not like how some of the rest kind of felt rushed and lazy. Like then Data would just stand in front of the business end of it. Yeah. Let me clean this musket. Let me look down the barrel. Okay, now plug it into a generator and see what happens.
It was so obvious that he was going to get shot with whatever.
I guess I wasn't looking closely enough to even see that there was a business end per se. It just looked like just a tube. I didn't know if there was something that like an emitter of any kind on it.
But then he sees a young Dr. Noonien Singh, played by Brant Spiner. Brant Spiner. I guess he just didn't want to do all the makeup, deal with it this time. Give him a break from. I mean, the Data makeup was bad enough, so he was probably excited to have a break from all of that.
Well, I mean, did they ever establish how old or young Soon was supposed to have been when he was doing that?
I mean, he worked on it his whole life. He built Data when he was younger. We saw him previously when he was very old.
Right. Yeah. But I guess, I don't know. I guess
in his dream, he could be any age. Doesn't matter.
True. Yeah. There's that as well.
I wrote down more Spiner on Spiner action. And just to back up one more time, the Data get shot by the device. If he hadn't been there, then it would have gone straight to the warp core. So, and the warp core would have, I don't know what warp cores dream of. But.
There was only one shot or late in the episode where Dr. Soong was like approaching Data and Data was laying on the bed on the bridge, where I'm like, that is an obvious stunt double that doesn't look like Brett Spiner as Data. The rest of the episode, they just used Brett Spiner in all the shots.
I don't know why I was so shocked and taken aback by that. Like, that's not him. That's not him at all.
Yeah, no. Makes total sense. It's surprising it only happened once.
Maybe it was a TOS homage, but either way, I was like, that's not a Spiner.
So Data's not capable of dreams or hallucinations, apparently, until now, because he activates a part of his brain. Cool. Like I said, I hadn't seen this episode, and I had forgotten that there was ever a point where he dreamed or had visions. So it's not a plot point that's important later.
Well, I honestly, I thought that they were leading to something else that isn't going to come up for a while, but I'm not going to say it.
Do androids dream of electric sheep? They could have answered the question here.
That would have been a great bit, actually. If they could have thrown one of those in there.
Good. Yeah.
Or apparently they just think of their dads, which I think the title of this episode should be Daddy
Fathers? Oh, Daddy Issues.
Yeah. Either one.
Or just think of your dad. That's a nice, they need to be more straightforward with these titles. So they're easier devices. All right.
You're right. Yeah. If it's been like the generic titles, Dad.
I guess we're probably getting up to the thing. And I like when, if you're going to have an A and B story, or maybe even like an A and A story, when they do that thing where it's obviously thematically connected. And I didn't even mind so much that they had that scene to, Worf and Data talking about it, to just like, here it is, guys. If you weren't picking up on this, because it actually kind of, helped each other. They helped each other in that sense. They kind of propelled each other in these directions that they needed to go. So
I liked the conversation between them.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes total sense the two of them just had that casual conversation, because we never see them hanging out, but we only see a glimpse of their week, and they've worked together long enough. I buy it as a genuine interaction.
They had a good segue for it. They actually had a good reason that Data gave for wanting to come to him.
Right.
Having heard of Klingon rituals and visions. But
and Worf's reaction, the two total different points of view of the characters was really good. I mean, Worf being like, you're so fortunate, that's so powerful, you've got to follow up on it.
There was some nuance that I really appreciated from the Spiner's performance there as he's coming into the room. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because I've been watching so much Orville lately. I'm actually into the new season. And, they're doing a lot of stuff with Isaac. So I can't help but start to see, when I jump back to TNG and see some of the differences in mannerisms, I'm like, wait a minute. But, Bashir sort of covers that when he's saying he's intentionally been designed to act more human. But Data, he walks into the door, does the thing that I would do, that little mouth work. Like I'm seeing Worf across the room. He looks like he's intensely thinking about something, probably not in the mood for this. I'm just going to go. All that communicated silently, just that, nope, gone. And Worf having to stop him and seeing that was just that kind of weird, I don't know how real, quote unquote, realistic that would be or consistent with Data's character at this point, but I thought it was very interesting that how you think it was a slip or just
going back to the AA storylines. I think it was interesting. I feel like they were taking their time with both of them. I know in other part ones, whether we knew they were part ones or not, I really liked how much was getting crammed in there in those part ones. Just so many things going on. This one was more. I felt it was like more leisurely. Like, you've got this one, and we're not really throwing anything else in here, which is fine too. I think I like the other thing more, but I think I just like those episodes more than this one. But
I'm glad they didn't split Data and Worf into two different episodes. Just keep them.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be as interesting on their own. I don't know.
I feel like in earlier seasons of Next Gen, they may have just aired the episodes basically back to back, and they were separate, but they were both about daddy issues.
I think you're right.
The conversation Data and Worf were having, I liked how it started, but I felt like Worf having the obvious revelations about his own father seemed a bit of a stretch and a bit uneven there.
Maybe. My only way to justify something like that would be to say that you already had Troy and I would say mostly Troy laying the groundwork earlier. And he's just been kind of fighting it the whole time as he's staring at the window. And this is just sort of him giving himself permission. Okay, this is my idea. This is Klingon tradition to do this thing. He finally found a rationalization he could spring off of. Although they did sort of play it like he unwittingly did. Obviously it wasn't something he was probably planning out, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm not saying this right. It did make him seem a little slow, I guess. I think that maybe that's what you're saying. It seems sort of like elementary, kind of like, wait a minute, maybe I'm talking about myself, But I think that, it probably could have been played to be a little bit more lofty, for lack of a better word. Artistic. I don't know.
I'll give you that. James Cromwell's character is super shady, but even so, Worf grabbing him by the lapels and hanging him over the railing at Deep Space Nine, and just bullying him in general, like, no, you'll be paid after. Just, It wasn't befitting of a Starfleet officer. While we've seen Worf cross those lines before, it still rubbed me the wrong way.
I was waiting to see if either somebody interceded or somebody saw it or something.
I was waiting for Odo to come up and put his hand on Worf's shoulder and be like, no.
But instead, it was just,
Odo was the railing at that point.
It made me think of The Dark Knight when he's holding Eric Roberts. I can't remember the character's name, but over the edge of the railing, he's like, from here, you can't kill me from this height. I'm counting on it. Breaks his ankles or whatever. So it made me think of that, the way he was growling at him.
Mm-hmm. And then apparently Worf went and cashed in a bunch of his vacation days without telling anybody where he was going, because that's the only way this would have worked.
That was my question for you guys. Is like, is this part of his shore leave and he's taking a shuttle with him?
Yeah.
I was like, this seems...
Well, they had to trim some of that fat to just keep things moving. Otherwise, it would have been like, I don't know.
Then I suddenly thought, wait, are they all there on shore leave? And I'm like, no, that's not why they're there. They're there to check some things out. And
no, I can't.
And for the record, I'm actually interested in Bajoran aqueduct functions. I actually do want to hear more about that. But
yeah. So we're told there's a bunch of predators on this planet, even though we never see any of them, like snakes that attack from above. Kind of feel like we needed to see some predators.
I thought that was another Chekhov's gun. Like, hey, there's going to be predators there. Okay. Well, I guess we're going to see some predators, and then we
Part two, all the snakes come down from the tree.
Right.
Got some xenomorphs and everything.
We saw bathers. We saw people taking baths, but we didn't see predators.
Were there multiple bathers?
Sorry, we saw a bather.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty racy. Yeah. Racy might be a little strong, but...
I mean, she's not worried about those snakes dropping in from above, but she should be worried about the snake in Worf's pants. So the two snakes in Worf's pants.
Knew it was coming somewhere.
Because we know Klingons have two.
I keep forgetting that, though.
Yeah. The way he just trusts her not to tell. And then she just leaves with Romulans. It feels ridiculous. And to me... And honestly, the whole sequence where he's like, oh, it's going to take me 12 hours to walk. Okay, well, I'm returning in 50 hours. Okay, so you're walking for 24 hours. Right. Maybe if you sleep, you still got 18 where you're trying to sneak in and deal with it. I don't know. It just all...
And then he's like, yeah, and I'm going to show up a different place. And you better not be late. So you're just going to land some other place that I don't know, but you want me to be close enough so I'm not late.
Yeah.
And then, I'm with you, Jimmy, when he's talking to the bather, as I'm going to call her right now, Bael,
played by Jennifer Gotti, best known for The Young and the Restless, Spice Principles, this role, and a separate role on Voyager.
She is the titular runaway in the video for Bon Jovi's song Runaway.
Huh.
So, which is the one Bon Jovi song I really like, actually. But to go back to their conversation, it's like, it's a lot of talking around. Like, I could give you some information, but I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you just enough so that the audience hears it. And it's like, whoa, man, what's going on here? This is weird, but nothing helpful to either one of them. Mm-hmm. So, it was just, it wasn't helpful to us either. It was just like, ooh, what's the mystery? What's going on here? What's going to happen? But I was like,
Let's just finish off Worf's plot, then we'll go back and pick up Data's, because they already skipped Data notes for me. But, so then Worf, goes in and tries to talk to these old Klingons, where we meet a couple of them. Lakor, played by Richard Hurd, who's best known for All the President's Men, China Syndrome, Get Out, The Mule. He's got 158 credits, a ton of them.
He was George's boss on Seinfeld with the Yankees.
He also plays Admiral Owen Paris in 4 episodes of Star Trek Voyager. So that's 4 episodes isn't a lot, but he's the father of one of the main characters, so that's kind of important.
I think he just passed away a few years ago. Good actor, though. Good.
Passed away in 2020 at the age of 87.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we also have the character of Gural, who was a female old Klingon played by Christine Rose, who wasn't that old when she played the part. She was 42. Right. But she was best known for the show Heroes, where she played Angela Bertrelli, NCIS, What Women Want, Trial and Error, How I Met Your Mother. She did 7 episodes.
She's got a ton of credits, yeah.
She does. She's a couple of real big... This is her only Trek, though, this 2-parter, but she's got 137 credits. They basically say, we're not going with you. We're not going to tell you everything, but no, you were right. Your dad is dead. So don't worry about him. But now you know too much. I mean, at least they confirmed that Worf's father died honorably and isn't among the 73 prisoners there, because that's really all Worf wants to know anyway. And
I thought that I also thought that was going to be another oh, yep, his dad is there. So I actually was like, oh, okay. I'm actually more interested now that you're like, nope, that's not what's going on here. But
right.
You couldn't have brought Alexander with him, though. I'm just kidding.
No, I feel like they were giving us enough information along the way to infer enough about the reason why some of that is happening, or at least, or why they're concerned about him being discovered, or I'm sorry, about him being there at all, and then wanting to take them away, and then wanting to tell others where they are. I mean, it's obvious why they're hiding. It's
why? Because of the dishonorable death thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what we need to find out
they didn't die
is,
honorably. Prisoners are looked down upon in Klingon society.
Right. They kind of hammered that. Well, all right. That's a different part of the discussion.
Is that why they're
I'll come back to
there?
that in a second.
Or is that just what we think?
Well,
why they might not want to be found.
Yes.
Okay.
However, we have to wonder what the relationship is with the what
the Romulan captors.
The Romulan.
Right.
What would appear to be the Romulan captors.
Yeah,
So,
it certainly didn't seem like they were acting like captors.
there's
It
probably
certainly
some
seemed like
special
the
thing that happened.
Romulans have been there just as long and become buddies with them.
Right. So that is intriguing. And I really don't remember the exact explanation for that right now.
Yeah, I haven't seen the episode. I've only read about it, and I don't remember what I read about it. So,
I mean, if they could still die in battle with honor, they just have to go find another battle.
that would be my argument.
That's that was what was nagging at me earlier. I feel like they were inflating that, the importance of that for the purpose of this episode. I'm sure we've heard things like that before, but he was really laying into that sort of black and white rule of this has to have happened here. If you're taken prisoner at all, your honor's done. There's no getting it back. Your family is ruined. Done. So that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how could have we ever really gotten into that before? Have they really explored that?
I was going to say I'm pretty sure I've never understood the Klingons' definition of honor.
Yeah,
honorable.
And it seems. I think one thing we have discussed before, though, is it seems like the Vulcan thing of never lying and then Klingons being honorable, and we see all these counterexamples of the way they actually behave. So it's like Worf is adhering to these principles in a way that the villainous Klingons wouldn't adhere to anyway. So I don't know, or they do it for. I guess they do it selectively for their own political purposes. It seems like.
Mm-hmm.
It's those things that are like, well, this is what the deal is with the Klingons. This is honorable, and then. It becomes a thing eventually where it's like, we've been saying that for several hundred years, but it's not true. Now, if it ever was, we've got things that we say these days that are from back in the day. Well, somebody just started saying it. So we decided, yeah, that's a canard or a whatever, a homily or whatever. It's like, no, that has no basis in fact. Feed a cold, starve a fever.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that's actually correct, but
right.
If I get a cold, I take advantage. I eat.
I did appreciate the scene of just Klingons singing around the campfire.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
And then it wasn't like
that's what they were doing when Worf found them. Yeah.
That it wasn't like, oh, this is the ceremony of
s'mores.
Yeah.
So back to Data's plot. The scene where Data and Picard discusses visions, first of all, is really good.
Yes.
Setting up for their relationship in the films, I feel like, where that gets really developed. But the whole point Picard makes of, you're not a culture of a bunch of people, you're a culture of one, and you need to look within, I thought was really good advice and very captainly.
I thought it was very
distracted
cool.
during that.
I thought it made so much sense because I'm like, yeah, what is all this stuff? And it also, and this is not surprising, but Picard has clearly read Freud's interpretation of dreams, because that's what Freud would say. He'd say, when people are like, well, your dreams can mean that if you see a open field, that means, there's whatever, something stupid, whatever. And, so I don't care for those books because I'm a strict Freudian, because Freud's thing is essentially the same thing. It's like,
the cigar.
What's the wish fulfillment in your dream? Every dream is a wish fulfillment. What are you wishing for? And, and generally it's based on something in your mind or something you've experienced or seen. Well, when you go to see the Sistine Chapel, you don't ask other people, hey, what do you think of that? You think, well, here's what this makes me think of.
Well, I might ask the tour guide.
Well, sure.
Hey, Doc, what do you think this is?
But what does it make you feel? What does it say to you?
Well, I think I get what you were trying to say as far as the dream interpretation, because I think it was popping in my head just then. You can read that big book of symbols and translations and so on, but it doesn't really make sense that everyone in the world is going to have some poetic kind of encoding of every thought they have. Like, oh, instead of thinking about this, I'm going to leave this trail of clues for myself to go and go into these deep symbols about this other thing, rather than just, what does this make you think of? There's probably a logical progression, or it's something completely different. I'm not averse to even considering mystical explanations, but that's not really important for this, as far as interpretation goes.
Well, then we get to see Data's been painting paintings, 23 exactly, in 6 hours and 27 minutes, which is insane. But I do like that he was inspired, and I do like the different look of all the paintings and wanting to follow the mind. And I appreciate that he's developed enough to do that.
Well, but before we get too far, I have to point out something just awful that popped into my head when you said that.
Uh-oh.
And that the Data is exploring his heritage through 23andMe, 23 paintings. So
that's why it's called 23andMe.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, you sent the questionnaire to their panel of dream experts or art experts, or, the Sistine Chapel tour guides, and they give you 23 paintings that would best describe your.
I thought you had to send them 23 paintings before they could interpret your dreams.
Yeah, I thought he was drawing things in a magazine, and they said send this to this address, and we'll judge it and let you know you're a good artist.
So we get some symbols that we don't quite understand, but of course are explained in his vision, except we never get to the whole flock of birds, so maybe he still gets out too early, but that's okay. But Data wants to try going back into the vision again, of course. Jordy's total enabler, like, yeah, this almost killed you, but sure, let me help you again.
This, of course, goes back to the thought of this. Let's just keep things moving. We know we're going to do this. And it's kind of funny to me in that moment how Jordy sort of sounded like that to me. It's like he's just going, I know I'm going to have to do it, so fine, let's just go.
No,
it's
you're
like,
not. Go tell Picard what Data wants to do, and he's going to say no.
No, it's just like, this is going to happen anyway. He knows it's going to happen. Let's just get this over with.
It should have never been allowed to happen, but okay, whatever.
I thought that second dream was pretty trippy. I actually enjoyed that when it's like from the bird's point of view or whatever, and the other stuff.
That was neat. I really enjoyed seeing Spot on the captain's chair.
Yes, I
picked that up before he mentioned it, like right away. And apparently, he's got a good relationship with his plant too, because that was also on the bridge. I didn't realize the front seats and stations of the bridge were completely removable, not even leaving a spot on the carpet where they were.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That was a cool look, I thought.
We get Dr. Soong telling Data he's proud of his advancement, but isn't that just Data telling Data he's proud of his own advancement because this is the Dr. Soong that he created in his head? Yeah, or is there like buried in this new subroutine an actual memory of Dr. Soong that he made? I don't know.
Is it like he found an Easter egg in a computer program?
That was my understanding of it. I mean, from what they ended up explaining, and what I would have thought, because it seemed like he was going through a fairly consistent progression up to a point, and I think that's something that's sort of like the cut scene that Dr. Soong left for him to. You've reached this point now. Here's my explanation of that. Yeah. Here's a little bit of interaction, even, but from here on, there you go.
It felt like this plot ended, and it's not going into part 2, right? To me, it felt like maybe. Data's story's over, and there'll be a different subplot for part 2.
Maybe.
You might be right.
Bashir's going to write a paper on it. But, like, it just happened. He was present for small parts of it. He's not going to ask Data any questions. He's just going to run off and write the paper and not even ask Data to collaborate. He's like, can I do it? And Data's like, sure. And he's like, okay, I have no questions for you. See you later. That doesn't make any. That bothered me a lot,
especially when he had all those questions earlier about his hair and everything and stuff.
Yes,
I don't know. I feel like he was still integral to the some of those discoveries. Certainly, I mean, I think there's enough there. It doesn't have to be like a 500-page book or anything, but at least an article's worth.
It's a 3-page book report. So that's what
but the text is size 48.
Right? Yeah. He just has to get to the word limit.
500 words. Let me see what I can do. The android known as Lieutenant Commander Data, who was built by Dr. Noonien Singh.
He's responding to an ad in the same magazine that had the ad about drawing for the Data's responding to. Fashion. This might not be the first episode. I feel like there's been a couple episodes lately where Troy is wearing her just regular uniform. It's not low cut. It's not a romper or jumper. And
get used to it.
Yeah,
hasn't that been the case consistently since they did that thing?
I think so.
Yeah,
last season.
Do you think that's just a choice Troy made, or do you think Picard or Riker were like, "Hey, you know what? Maybe you should just wear the regular uniform a little more"?
I think. Well, they made a point of that captain that came in and chain of command and telling her that she had to.
Yeah.
But I would imagine it's up to her if she wanted to switch back or not, which really ended up being up to Marina Sirtis, who didn't want to switch back.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think Troy validly might say, you know what? Yeah, maybe I should. Maybe it just made her think. Even pain in the butts can have a point sometimes.
Right. That's true.
She's in the command track. I also wonder if maybe she takes her career a little more seriously here. Like, not just beyond being a counselor, but being part of the command staff and wanting to advance a little bit. Because it seems like she kind of does later. I don't know. Yeah,
it's a little thing, but I think, it's worth having this discussion we're having.
I mean, I appreciate the uniform. I like the uniform more than any of her one pieces. I kind of wish she had it from the beginning, honestly. But that's just my personal aesthetics. That has nothing to do with anything else.
She wears her hair differently with it too, which I mean, her hair looks great in any of its multitudes.
Well, from what I understood of the comments at the time when we were going through that episode with the new captain coming in, it seems like the writers might not have even thought that far ahead or even considering the character choice going forward. But it really was just sort of like, we're writing this in because Marina Sirtis doesn't want to do this anymore. Here you go.
Alternate episode.
So I know we're going to find out what the Klingons are doing there, but my thought was it's Hogan's Heroes in space, so they let themselves get captured, but they're running operations out from within that Romulan camp, and those Romulans are idiots. So they know nothing.
I didn't mention this, but I think from here on out, we're basically writers, directors. We're going to be with a lot of familiar names. This was directed by Woodridge Colby. Story written by Brown and Braga, one of the regulars.
Yeah.
So.
What occurred to me when Data got zapped at first was I don't know why, but I thought it was gonna be like a Freaky Friday thing with Dr. Bashir.
Oh God, so, that would have been awful.
Yeah.
So glad they didn't do that. Yeah, mine was just an actual crossover. So instead of instead of what we got, who was your annoyance this week?
Easy, lazy one, Bashir.
See, I didn't find him annoying in this one.
Yeah,
finally. I'm going to say the Klingon prisoners, not just their unwillingness to go, but their unwillingness to even explain anything to him.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mine is really the tradition, or whatever Klingons were telling Worf that they had to think that. I mean, just the whole
Klingon tradition.
I mean, how can you avoid being how can you blame the Klingon himself for being taken prisoner? Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, we blame in our society. We blame people for things that are out of their control all the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you could be killed, you could be potentially, if you're already that much out of control of the situation, you could be knocked unconscious or something.
It's a commentary on, I saw it as a commentary on toxic male masculinity. I mean,
true, certainly.
Alpha masculine male isn't going to admit weakness if they were, sexually assaulted. They're not going to admit that. You know what I mean? Like, they won't let themselves be a victim. It's part of that toxic masculinity.
I'm like Trump. I'd like my heroes not to get captured. So that's where I come from.
And this was Steven's last episode on It's All Been Talked Before.
Well, I guess Klingons don't like their heroes to be captured.
Who are you going to have a drink with?
This one's also just as obvious as last one. Biel.
I'm going to go with the same as my annoyance, the Klingon prisoners. I want to hang out around their campfire while they sing and have a drink with them.
Yeah, and eat s'mores. Klingon s'mores.
Yeah.
The bather. As Steven said.
Ranking the episode, I have to say, when I first finished watching it, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be up near the top. The more we talk about it, the more I think it's got a lot of weaknesses. Let's start in the middle, see where we end up. Better or worse than True Q?
Better.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is ballpark. This is a good place to start, I think.
I mean, you can argue that Worf and Data have better character development in this, but that was a more compelling story that made more sense to me.
Man, all right, maybe.
I like a little bit, yeah.
So to me, the this is a little more importance to the character arcs and growth and whatever, but
Sure.
I'm inclined to go below. Steven's the tiebreaker.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm going to go below 2.
Ooh.
Okay, let's figure out where Keith
But I
would
did
put
like
it.
this episode.
Yeah, I did too. Keith, would you go above Realm of Fear? I definitely want to go above that, so I think we're in a good position, but
I suppose you're right.
you wouldn't go above Realm of Fear?
I probably would because of this really would be because of recency bias. I think if
Okay.
I really had time to watch it again and
Above that is Ship in a Bottle, the Moriarty episode. Would you go above that?
I guess not.
Okay, so we're
Still feels
going...
comparable to me.
Okay, now we know where Keith stands. Let's see where it's going to end up. Steven, better or worse than The Quality of Life?
I think I'd go above.
Yeah, I'm on board for that. That puts it at number 8 of 16. So pretty much smack in the middle. Next week, Deep Space Nine. Not part 2. Sorry, air date order. You gotta wait. In 2 weeks, we'll do Birthright part 2. Next week, The Passenger. Raul Vantika, a captured criminal, is badly burned and dies in Bashir's arms, but the criminal's captor believes that he is still alive.
Oh, boy.
I mean, that's-
Until then,
all right.
More body
Live long.
hopping.
Oh.
And call your dad.
Unless you're in battle, then you must die.
with honor.
Yes. Do not live long and prosper if you are captured.
It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?